Sarah rushed through the revolving doors of the Meridian Tower, her heels clicking against the marble floor. She had exactly 15 minutes before her presentation to the board of directors. 15 minutes to grab coffee and mentally prepare for the biggest pitch of her career. The coffee shop on the 3rd floor was her usual spot, a small sanctuary in the corporate maze where she could think clearly. As the elevator climbed, Sarah reviewed her notes one last time. 3 years of research, countless late nights, and her entire future rode on this presentation. The elevator dinged softly at the 3rd floor, and she stepped out expecting to see the familiar warm glow of Café Luna. Instead, she found darkness and a handwritten sign that read, "Closed for renovation." Her heart sank. This was her ritual, her good luck charm. She always had her morning coffee here before important meetings. Without it, she felt completely off balance. Sarah stood there for a moment, processing the disappointment, when she heard the soft sound of jazz music drifting from behind the closed glass doors. Curious, she peered through the darkened windows and saw a faint light coming from the back of the cafe. Someone was definitely inside. Sarah knocked gently on the glass, and after a few moments, an elderly man appeared. He had kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and wore a coffee-stained apron over his casual clothes. The man unlocked the door and smiled warmly. "We're closed for renovations, but you look like you desperately need coffee." His voice carried a slight Italian accent that reminded Sarah of her grandfather. "I'm Marco, the owner. I was just testing some new equipment before the contractors arrive." Sarah explained her situation, how this cafe had been her morning ritual for 2 years, and how important today's presentation was to her. Marco listened intently, nodding with understanding. "Ah, I see. You're not just looking for coffee, you're looking for confidence. Come in, come in." The cafe looked different in the dim light. Furniture was covered with drop cloths, and construction materials were stacked in corners. But the espresso machine gleamed like a beautiful brass instrument in the soft light. Marco moved behind the counter with the grace of someone who had been making coffee for decades. "Tell me about this presentation," Marco said as he began grinding beans. The rich aroma filled the air, instantly calming Sarah's nerves. She found herself opening up to this stranger, describing her innovative marketing strategy that could revolutionize how the company reached younger consumers. Marco listened while crafting what looked like a work of art in a cup. He asked thoughtful questions that helped Sarah articulate her ideas even more clearly. "You know," he said, carefully creating foam art on top of her latte, "I've been in business for 40 years. I've seen many people chase success, but the ones who truly make it are those who believe in their vision, not just their numbers." As Sarah sipped the perfectly crafted coffee, Marco shared stories of his own journey. How he had started with nothing but a dream and a borrowed espresso machine. How he had faced rejection and setbacks, but never gave up on his vision of creating a place where people could find comfort and community over a simple cup of coffee. "This renovation," Marco continued, "it's not just about updating the space. I'm creating something new, something that honors the past while embracing the future. Just like what you're doing with your presentation." His words resonated deeply with Sarah. She realized that her nervousness wasn't about the presentation itself, but about stepping into something unknown and potentially transformative. Marco walked over to an old wooden box behind the counter and pulled out a small leather-bound notebook. "This belonged to my father. He wrote down every recipe, every customer's preference, every lesson he learned about business and life. He always said that success isn't about having all the answers, it's about having the courage to ask the right questions." He handed Sarah a small card with the cafe's new logo. "When you go into that boardroom, remember that you're not just presenting numbers and strategies. You're sharing a vision of the future. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is help others see what's possible." Sarah finished her coffee and felt a sense of calm she hadn't experienced in weeks. The caffeine was working. But more importantly, her confidence had returned. She thanked Marco, who refused to accept payment. "Just promise me you'll come back and tell me how it went. And remember, whether they say yes or no today, your worth isn't determined by one presentation." As Sarah walked toward the elevator, she turned back to see Marco already back at work, preparing for his own transformation. She realized that everyone was facing their own renovations, their own moments of stepping into the unknown. The elevator arrived, and as the doors closed, Sarah caught her reflection in the polished steel. She looked ready. The presentation went better than Sarah had ever imagined. The board was engaged, asking detailed questions and nodding with approval throughout her pitch. When she finished, the room was silent for a moment before the CEO stood up and began clapping. "This is exactly the kind of innovative thinking we need. When can you start implementing this strategy?" 3 months later, Sarah returned to the newly renovated Café Luna. The space was beautiful, blending modern design with classic touches that honored its history. Marco spotted her immediately and broke into a wide grin. "The successful presenter returns. I've been waiting to hear your story." Over another perfectly crafted latte, Sarah told Marco about her promotion, her new team, and how his words had given her the confidence to not just present her ideas, but to truly believe in them. "You know," she said, "this place looks amazing, but it still feels like home." Marco smiled and pointed to a small plaque near the register that read, "Success isn't about having all the answers, it's about having the courage to ask the right questions." "Some things," he said, "are worth preserving, even in the midst of change."